The NBA season is not that far away, so let's preview every single team in the league. There's no part one, there's no part two, there's no Eastern Conference, Western Conference, every single team all in one video. First, let's talk about one of the most interesting teams in the entire league this season, and that is the Boston Celtics. Obviously, they lost like half of their core rotation guys from when they won the title a couple years ago, whether it be due to injuries or to the offseason. And now, when you're looking at their starting lineup, it's actually pretty difficult to figure out what the rotation is even going to look like in Boston this year. For me, their starting five is going to look something like Derek White, Anthony Simons, Jaylen Brown, Sam Hauser, and then Keita. Then you've got Peyton Pritchard, you've got Boucher off the bench. Not a whole lot happening there in Boston, and that's one of the reasons I'm probably lower on them than most people. I do have Pritchard still coming off of the bench and Simons starting. You can flip either one of those guys if you want to, but the point is, without Jason Tatum in the lineup, with losing a bunch of the other rotation guys that they've lost, trading away Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons, this team is going to be very, very thin, and it's difficult to even get to like a 9 or a 10-man rotation with this group. I would say generally I'm lower on Boston than anybody else is, or at least than what the consensus is. I have them finishing 11th in the Eastern Conference. I don't even have them as a play-in team for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, they just don't look very good on paper. Jaylen Brown's good, but I don't see him as someone, along with Derek White, that can like carry this team to, a 45-win season or anything. And also, I don't think Jason Tatum's going to play this year. And if you get to halfway through the year and you're 10 games under 500 and you're Boston, what's your motivation for, in a year you actually have your own first-round pick, really trying to go all out just to win 40 games and maybe make the play-in? I think Boston's going to be worse than most people expect. I've got them at 11th in the East. Next up, let's talk about the New York Knicks. This is a team that undoubtedly is going to be near the top of the Eastern Conference for pretty much anyone. They've got a new head coach in Mike Brown. They've got some interesting lineup things. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try and make adjustments to the Knicks starting five. For me going into the season, it's going to be Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Towns. And I think the only question mark there really is if you want to have Mitchell Robinson in the starting five alongside of Karl Anthony Towns, something that worked pretty well for them in the postseason. In that scenario, Josh Hart would be the guy coming off the bench. And then they've got some nice pieces like Miles McBride as well. But for me, I think they're going to stick with that group. I think first and foremost, they're going to try and figure out new things from a coaching perspective before they start changing up the lineup. Mike Brown is going to be someone that's going to try and definitely add more creativity to the offense than Tom Thibodeau ever had there in New York. And I do think it's going to work. I think they're going to finish second in the East, partially because the East is just a catastrophe. We already talked about the Celtics. Obviously, they're going to be lower in the standings. And I think the Knicks are going to be right up there. There's definitely going to be a lot of eyes on them in terms of how well they are able to change and improve based off of the coaching situation changing, but I still think they're really good. Cat and Brunson pick and roll is going to be really good. They're going to involve OG and Bridges more offensively, and I'm just really intrigued to see what they do with some of these new pieces, even guys like Jordan Clarkson on the roster. Next up, let's talk about one of the stranger and weirder teams in the Eastern Conference, the Toronto Raptors. Right now, for me in their starting lineup, I've got Emmanuel Quickley, I've got Grady, I've got Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl. The obvious omission there is RJ Barrett coming off the bench, but I think they just need more shooting. They need a little bit more off-ball movement in that starting group. And so if it was up to me, I would just have RJ Barrett come off the bench and have him be kind of the secondary creator, because you've already got a bunch of guys in the starting lineup that want to have the ball a decent amount. And so I'd like to see what that would look like with RJ Barrett coming off the bench. The other thing is this team traded for Brandon Ingram, and he's played 0 minutes for them. He had like the worst ankle injury of all time, apparently, towards the end of the year, and didn't play for them at all. It's a solid starting group, some interesting pieces off the bench as well, but I just don't like how the pieces come together. I'm probably generally a little bit lower on Toronto than most other people. I've got them finishing in the play-in tournament, but at 10th in the conference. I think given the lack of strength in the East, there's probably people that are much more optimistic than that on Toronto. I'm just not one of them. Next up is a team we're not going to talk about for very long, and it's the Brooklyn Nets. I have them finishing last in the Eastern Conference. They've got Cam Thomas. I think Igor Jimin, the top 10 pick, is going to start for them. Zaire Williams, pick a wing. Doesn't really matter who that slot is. And then Michael Porter Jr., as long as he's healthy. And then Nick Claxton. All the rookies coming off the bench, and then a couple of other guys as well. I don't think they're going to try and be good at all. They got bad lottery luck this past year. They need like a core star guy. They're going to tank. MPJ might not be on the team after the All-Star break. Claxton might not be on the team after the All-Star break. Cam Thomas doesn't really want to be there, but has to be because he wants to sign a qualifying offer. He's going to be taking a ton of shots. Really, the only interesting thing is going to be the development of all of the rookies that they drafted, but I don't think they're going to be very good. The only counter would be Jordy Fernandez was really good as a coach last year, and this is kind of what we thought about the team last year, and then they actually were a little bit better, but I still don't think they're going to be very good. I actually think they're going to have the worst record in the entire league. It's either going to be them or Utah. Spoiler. Now we're going to talk about maybe the hardest team in the entire league to predict this upcoming season, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers. Starting five-wise, it's pretty simple to me with the exception of one spot. I'm going to go Maxey, Edgecombe, Oubre, George, and Embiid. The only spot there that is kind of in question is whether Edgecombe is going to start. You've got McCain, who had a really good first start to his rookie season before he got hurt. Kyle Lowry is an option. There's a couple of other guard options, but McCain as the bench guard, as the scoring guard, to me, makes a lot of sense. Edgecombe builds some chemistry with some of those starters. He can defend really well. I think he fits in really nicely with this starting group. And you could tell me anything happens with the Sixers this year. You could say that the 1% outcome happens and Embiid and Maxey and George and all these guys are healthy and good, and they're like genuinely, I think they could have the best record in the conference. Like if Embiid and George and Maxey all play like 70 plus games by some absolute miracle, they could be the 1 seed. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be more so not as bad as it was last year. I don't think Paul George is going to be as bad as he was. Embiid looks like he's in pretty good shape this offseason. He's not coming off of playing in the Olympics like he was last year, but I'm just not that high on Philly, and I don't understand how you could have a realistic mindset of, oh, they're going to finish really well in the regular season given all of the injury concerns. So to me, I've got them at 9th. I've got them in the play-in, and they could definitely be a dangerous play-in team if they are healthy as we get towards the postseason, but it's so difficult to predict what's going to happen there in terms of trying to beat any kind of optimistic about their injury stuff, so I got them 9th in the conference. Next up now, let's talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Unsurprisingly, I have them as the 1 seed in the West this upcoming season. Their starting lineup is not a mystery. It's SGA, Dort, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein. Obviously, there's some flexibility there depending on the matchup with Hartenstein starting or not starting. Obviously, throughout the year, if there's injuries, Cason Wallace can start, Alex Caruso can start. I don't really feel like we need to say a whole lot about Oklahoma City. Everybody knows that they're really good. Everybody knows that they have a ton of depth. There's not a whole lot changing from year to year. They've got all these picks. If they did need to make a move midseason, if someone did get hurt, they're going to be really good. I think they're going to be with the 1 seed in the conference once again. They're such a good regular season team because of their play style coming off the title last year. And remember, they were as good as they were in the regular season last year, even with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, other guys missing a bunch of time. They come in fully healthy this year. Chet maybe takes a step forward offensively. Jalen Williams recovers from that offseason surgery, and they're going to be right back at the top of the conference. Next, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. Again, the starting lineup is not that much of a mystery. It's Jamal Murray, it's Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, who they traded for in the offseason, no more MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and of course, Nikola Jokic. The more interesting thing for Denver is they have a significant amount more depth than they've had really over the last couple of seasons. Had a really good offseason, kind of along the margins. They've got Jonas Valanciunas, who they kind of had to convince to be on the team this year, but he's going to be there, and they actually have a legit backup big behind Jokic, which is huge. They've been trying to do like a DeAndre Jordan thing for the last couple of seasons. They tried to do Dario Saric. Valanciunas is legit good still, especially if you're going to ask him to play 15 minutes a night as a bench big. I really like that for them. Then you've got all of the young guys, right? You got Peyton Watson, you got Julian Strawther, you got Jalen Pickett, and then of course you've got someone like Bruce Brown that's now going to be back on the team as well. Denver is extremely dangerous to me. I've got them finishing 3rd in the West, and when we get to the postseason, they absolutely have a chance against any team that they play, including this up-and-coming Rockets team we're going to talk about, including the defending champs in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jokic is that good. They've rounded out the rest of the roster really well. Cam Johnson should be a really, really good fit. This is a dangerous, dangerous team, and I cannot wait to see what they look like once the season gets started. Next, let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. In terms of their starting 5, I do still have Mike Conley in there, then Anthony Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, and Gobert. Off the bench, you've got Dillingham, you've got Naz Reid, you've got Dante DiVincenzo, a bunch of different options. And I think Minnesota is one of these teams that every year now we kind of just overlook because they have been pretty stable apart from obviously the massive Karl Anthony Towns trade. And I think they're going to be even better this year than they were last year. A little bit of extra time to really get the Julius Randle thing to work. It wasn't that good at the beginning of the year, and then he got hurt, and then he had a pretty good postseason for them. The one thing for them that I'm really curious about is how much are we really going to be doing the Mike Conley thing during the year, because I could easily see a scenario in which DiVincenzo starts to give them more spacing. Obviously, that gives Ant a lot more of the on-ball reps, just taking pretty much all the Mike Conley reps away and giving it to him, and a little bit of DiVincenzo as well. The obvious wild card here is Dillingham coming off the bench. Is he going to be anything for them? They've also got Terrence Shannon, who was really good for them at points in the postseason last year. We know Naz Reid is going to be really good. This is a well-rounded team with one spot that they really need to figure out, and it's no disrespect to Mike Conley. Dude's just old. Like, they just need to have someone step up and take more of those minutes. To me, I think that guy is going to be DiVincenzo, because even though he's obviously a really good shooter, he can do some stuff on the ball, and I think him and Ant would work really well together. But obviously Dillingham is the other guy you're keeping an eye on there as well, in addition to guys like Terrence Shannon. I think Minnesota's still going to be really good. I've got them at 4th in the conference, which is probably higher than consensus, and I've got them right up there with some of those other really strong contenders at the top of the West. Next up is a team that I can't figure out what to do with their starting lineup, and it's the Portland Trailblazers. They've got like 9 guys that realistically could start this season. If you made me do it, I would say that this is going to be the starting lineup on opening night. Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant, and Donovan Clingan. That obviously leaves off the bench Toumani Camara, who was unbelievable for them last year as an all-defense caliber guy. You've got Shaedon Sharpe, who's this explosive scorer, but got benched last year because he wouldn't guard. And then you've got some of the bigs like Duop Reith and Young Hansen. But to me, the real questions here are, who is going to be the guy? Is it going to be Scoot? Is going to be Shaedon Sharpe? Because they need someone to step up offensively. They're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the Western Conference, but they've got a little bit of that last 7 or 8 years of the Orlando Magic in them, where it's like, okay, cool, you're going to be at a guard. Can anybody score? There's no Anthony Simons. He was the best shooter on the team, the best scorer on the team. Now it's, okay, is Scoot going to be someone we can give a bunch of ball screen reps to every single game? Is Shaedon Sharpe going to be someone that we're going to be forced to start in place of someone like Drew Holiday because he's just that good offensively? Is Denny going to continue his incredible finish to the year last year? A really, really intriguing and an interesting team, and a team that I want to like. I want the Blazers to be good because there's so many interesting pieces here. Unfortunately, the West is just really, really good. I have them finishing 11th in the conference, which is way lower than I thought they would be when I went into the exercise. They're going to be right on the edge of potentially in the play-in. I just don't think they're going to be good enough offensively. I like the Drew Holiday addition, but you're always kind of worried about health with him. I don't know what to expect enough from a lot of the young guys. And even though there's pieces to be moved here, talking about moving Jeremy Grant, you can talk about all the different lineup combinations. I think they're going to be just on the outside looking in of the play-in, and hopefully that means that we get a lot of development from guys like Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe, and then we go into next year, and all of a sudden Damian Lillard's on the team, and it's a really exciting Blazers team for the following season. I wish I could put them higher, but I just couldn't do it when I looked at the entirety of the West. Next up, let's talk about the Jazz. I really don't think we need to talk about them very much at all. It's them and the Nets are probably going to be the 2 worst records in the entire league this year. If you tried to put together a starting lineup, I would go with Collier, George, Ace Bailey, the rookie, Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler, which gives you Walter Clayton. You got Filipowski off the bench. You've got Cody Williams off the bench, a couple of other guys as well. Obviously, getting rid of some of their veteran guards has opened up a lot of minutes in the backcourt for guys like Collier and George, and then obviously the rookie Ace Bailey as well. Really, the question for me for Utah is, how bad are they going to try and be, right? Like, are they really going to try and win like 12 games? Because I think a team like the Nets are really going to try and do that, because obviously they want high draft position. And then also, is Lauri Markkanen on the roster at the end of the season? That's the big question mark for me, is are they going to keep him, or is it going to be something where they kind of showcase him all the way through January and the beginning of February, and then all of a sudden, you know, he's on the Warriors or whatever roster you want to put him on, and they're getting a bunch of pieces back, and it is a real full 100% reset once again in Utah. But in terms of where they fit in the conference, they're the worst team in the West. They're potentially the worst team in the entire league. And again, really the only point of interest is what happens with Lauri Markkanen. Next up, let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. We know what the starting lineup is going to be for the most part. We know that it's going to be Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen. That 5th spot is obviously up in the air. They tried a bunch of different things. I think it's going to be DeAndre Hunter. I know they tried to bring him off the bench after trading for him midseason, but I would just rather have him out there than someone like Max Strus or Dean Wade or some of these other pieces that they have. There's some interesting options depending on the matchup where they could go with Lonzo in place of whatever that 5th spot is, whether it's DeAndre Hunter, or if you wanted to go Evan Mobley at the 5 and you want to go Lonzo, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and whoever at the 4, whether that be DeAndre Hunter, whether that be whoever alongside Evan Mobley, having a little bit more guard depth. Obviously they lose Ty Jerome, but I like Lonzo as well, gives them a lot of different options. And it's kind of the same story with Cleveland that it's been the last couple of years. You know who the core 4 guys are. You're unsure how well they fit together on each end of the floor. There's always talk about, well, Mobley could play more at the 5 and Mitchell could play more, you know, with some of these other wings around him that aren't or some of these other defensive guys that aren't Darius Garland. And then we get to the postseason and they can't get it all figured out. I still think they're going to be the best team in the East this year, obviously in absence of a healthy Celtics team, just ahead of the New York Knicks because they're just such a good regular season team. They get up so many threes. They didn't really lose too much. Obviously the loss of Ty Jerome, but you bring in someone like Lonzo. I like that fit for them. The real question is just what's going to happen in the postseason. Can they finally put it together? Can they show all of the stuff in the regular season, all the stuff in the postseason, I should say, that they showed in the regular season? That is the question for Cleveland, but I've got them as the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Next up, sadly, we got to talk about the Indiana Pacers. It sucks because sometimes I think about the Pacers season, I just kind of forget that Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in Game 7. I'm like, oh, yeah, that did happen. But it's still a really, really interesting team. I think they are super well equipped, way more well equipped than most teams around the league to deal with the loss of someone as important to their team as Tyrese Halliburton. In terms of the starting 5, I got Nembhard, Mathurin. Rick Carlisle literally already told us that Benedict Mathurin is going to be a starter this year in place of the injured Tyrese Halliburton. Nesmith, Siakam, and I've got Isaiah Jackson at the 5, but you could tell me literally anyone starts at the 5. You could tell me Jay Huff. You could tell me James Wiseman. You could tell me Obi Toppin starts alongside Siakam and they go super small. I think they're going to give Isaiah Jackson the first crack at it. I think they like Isaiah Jackson. They like his rim running and his defenses and athleticism, obviously coming off of an injury, but it's going to be a bunch of different guys, right? And I'm probably a little bit higher than most people on Indiana, at least I would guess. I haven't really gone into it and looked a ton, but I still think that there is a lot to like here. Nembhard's really good. Mathurin can take a step forward. They're not going to have that kind of, central passing hub and the guy that really runs everything in Halliburton, but they're going to kind of get used to that a little bit throughout the season. They're still going to play fast. They still have Siakam, who's one of the better two-way frontcourt guys in the entire league. I've got Indiana finishing 8th in the conference, and I think you could talk me into them just being like 6th and higher and not even being in the play-in just because Carlisle's that good of a head coach. They have an identity even without Tyrese Halliburton, and they got a bunch of really good players and a bunch of really good depth. I could see Indiana punching above their weight throughout the season just because, 1, the conference isn't that good, but 2, they're just that good. They just made the finals. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be like the 11th seed in the conference. Next, let's talk about one of the hardest teams to figure out this season, and it is the Milwaukee Bucks. I went into this and was like, okay, let's figure out a starting 5 for them, right? We know it's going to be Turner, Kuzma, and Giannis in the front court. That's absolutely what's going to happen. Do you want to try and guess what the backcourt options are right now, though, in Milwaukee? It is tough to figure out. I ultimately went with Cole Anthony and Gary Trent. Those were my backcourt options in terms of the starting 5 in Milwaukee that I went with. Off the bench, that leaves you with Bobby Portis, of course. Kevin Porter Jr. was pretty good for them last year. Andre Jackson, Gary Harris, AJ Green. I went back and forth on this a lot. There's obviously going to be a bunch of different guys starting in the backcourt throughout the season, whether it be due to matchup or injury. I kind of threw around the idea of Kuzma and Giannis as the on-ball guys, and I was like, okay, why can't we just start AJ Green and Gary Trent and just have a bunch of shooting out there? Ultimately, I went towards a little bit more of a traditional lineup with someone like Cole Anthony on the ball, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that by the end of the year is what they go to, and it's Turner, Kuzma, Giannis, plus 2 guys that are just out there to shoot, and AJ Green and Gary Trent. I still think Milwaukee is going to be pretty good, and it's only because of how good Giannis is and the defensive upgrade that Miles Turner should be. Fingers crossed, he hasn't been as good in recent years, but should still be a overall kind of mobility upgrade over someone like Brook Lopez. And so I have them at 6th in the conference, which feels wrong still to have a team with Giannis on it that still has a couple of other decent pieces on the roster. It feels weird to have them be that low in a conference that isn't that good, but I don't really like Kuzma. I think Turner is generally a little bit overrated, and their backcourt options are terrible, and it's not like anyone's super excited about the coach either. I have them at 6 in the conference. You could tell me literally anything happens. You could tell me that they finish 12th and Giannis gets traded in the middle of the year. You could tell me that they're a top 3 team because Giannis is just that good, but right now I've got them at 6. Moving on now to one of the teams I'm most excited to talk about this season, and that is the Detroit Pistons. Starting 5-wise, it's a little bit weird to figure out. Of course, you've got Cade. I did put Jaden Ivey in there coming off the injury. I went with Duncan Robinson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren off the bench. That gives you Karis LeVert, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, and Paul Reed. Now, to me, I could see a bunch of different options there in terms of the Duncan Robinson and honestly even the Jaden Ivey spot. Like, one of the things that made the Pistons good last year was that they had a bunch of spacing around Cade, and then late in the year they had someone like Dennis Schroeder come off the bench to be the creator alongside of Cade. But ultimately, talent-wise, like, Ivey kind of has to be a starter, assuming that he comes back well from this injury. And that gives you some really cool youth options off the bench. I think Asar Thompson is awesome. I would not be surprised if they decide to put him in there if they feel like they can get enough spacing from someone some of their other spots. I wouldn't be surprised to see Asar Thompson run some alongside of someone like Tobias Harris and just not go with a traditional 5 out there. He is definitely the X factor alongside of Ivy for their entire season. And then Ron Holland was unbelievable in Summer League, and he could be a guy that could absolutely elevate this team. This is all of a sudden, within the span of like 12 months, become a really exciting and interesting roster. But again, I think given some of their spacing concerns, I think Duncan Robinson kind of has to be out there. And then if it just is too bad defensively, you can figure some other things out. I like Detroit. Generally, there's a couple of other teams in the East that I like better. And they did lose some pieces that were pretty important to them towards the end of the year last year. Guys like Dennis Schroeder, guys, of course, like Malik Beasley. But for me, I've got Detroit finishing at 5th in the conference, and given how wide open the conference looks to be, they could definitely be higher than that. They could definitely make a run in the postseason. I don't really think there's all that many teams in the East that have a better overall roster than Detroit does. There are a couple that definitely do, but I've got them at 5th in the conference. I like them a lot. Next, let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. This is a weird team, man. I'm going to go starting 5-wise. I'm going to go Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Matas Buzelis, which I think those are 100% locks along with Vooch at the 5 spot because he just kind of has to, assuming he's going to be on the team for most of the year. Then at the 4 spot, I went with Patrick Williams. I don't feel good about it. I think realistically, you could go with another guard. You could go with Dosunmu and have Buzelis play up a position and just play really small. You're going to give up 1,000,000 points because Giddey can't guard. Kobe White is small. Buzelis is okay on defense. Vucevic can't guard. And Dosunmu is pretty good, but he can only do so much for you defensively. You're going to give up 1,000,000 points, but still, it could be an interesting team. If you want to go with Noah Senge as the starter at the 4, that's fine. Kevin Huerter could be out there as a shooter. They don't really have a lot of great options in that 3-4 spot, so I did go with Patrick Williams. But ultimately, I think they're going to be a pretty fun league pass team. Josh Giddey was really good towards the end of the year statistically. I'm going to want to watch and see the development of someone like Buzelis, Kobe White. Vooch hopefully gets traded at some point and they get someone at the 5 you're at least semi-excited about moving forward. It's an interesting team. I just unfortunately don't think it's a very good one. I think they're going to be 12th in the conference. They're going to be picking in the top 10 again. They're not going to get good lottery luck. They're going to pick like 7th in the lottery. They're going to get some other guy that's like good but not great. And they're just going to keep hoping that someone like Matas Buzelis becomes the star that they need on this roster. And until that happens or until they make a big trade, you can pretty much copy and paste this preview for next season for the Bulls as well. Next, let's talk about the LA Lakers. There's actually more interesting questions here in terms of what the lineup should be than I thought that there would be coming into the season. Obviously, you've got Luka, you've got LeBron. I think Ayton is definitely going to be the 5. Beyond that, there are some interesting questions you can ask in terms of, should Rui be starting for this team? Should Austin Reeves be starting for this team? Ultimately, that is the group that I went with, projecting their starting 5, Luka, LeBron, Ayton, Reeves, and Rui. But if you want to get a little bit creative with someone like Marcus Smart, maybe you could put him in there as someone that could maybe try and guard a little bit. Like, that's the thing with this Lakers team. It's cool you've got Luka. It's cool you've got LeBron. If Reeves is also out there, that's 3 perimeter guys that just cannot guard. And Rui's okay defensively, but he's not going to guard a backcourt guy. So you're asking Austin Reeves to do that? You can put Marcus Smart in there and have Reeves come off the bench. I think that's probably the correct basketball decision, but whether they actually do that is unlikely to me because Reeves is so good that him coming off the bench probably doesn't make a ton of sense, and he's in line for a new contract, so he probably doesn't want to come off the bench himself. You could maybe make a case for someone like Jake LaRavia to be out there alongside of Rui or in place of Rui so that you can have more spacing out there. You got Dalton Connect, you got Vando, you got Maxi Kleber, you got Jackson Hayes. Generally speaking, there's more depth on this Lakers roster than I realized, but along with that depth comes more questions than I would have thought in terms of who the starting lineup is going to be. I think the 8 thing is going to work out pretty well for him. If LeBron is not being weird all season, I think him and Luka are going to be able to figure it out. They're going to be pretty good. Losing someone like Dorian Finney-Smith is obviously an issue. There's not a lot of defense on this roster, so that's definitely a concern. But I still think the Lakers are going to be pretty solid in what's going to be a tough Western Conference. I've got them at 6th in the conference, but once you get into the postseason, as we saw with a team like Minnesota last year, a lot of these West teams are pretty evenly matched. And so if you've got Luka and he's healthy and he's locked in and he's ready to go, you can do pretty much anything you want to in the postseason. There's also obviously always the possibility of like a midseason trade, whether it does or doesn't involve LeBron. But right now, I've got the Lakers finishing at 6th as one of the more intriguing teams in the conference this season. Next, let's talk about a team that I can't even begin to figure out and try and predict, but we're going to do it anyway. It's the LA Clippers. I'm just assuming that the Kawhi thing is not going to impact their roster this year. I'm assuming the investigation is going to take a while, and as a result, Kawhi's contract isn't going to be like voided or anything. If 4 months from now, Kawhi just is a free agent because his contract got voided, my bad, but I'm just going to assume that he's going to be on the team. And in that scenario, it's difficult to figure out their starting lineup given some of these offseason additions that they made. But here's what I came up with. Harden, Chris Dunn, Kawhi, John Collins, and Zubac, which off the bench gives you a bunch of really good options. Bradley Beal, Derek Jones, Nick Batum, Bogdanovich, Brook Lopez, who I think a lot of people forgot that they signed. Obviously, there's the politics of this of like, okay, maybe Bradley Beal should be starting in place of Chris Dunn because like he's Bradley Beal. But one of the things that was really good for the Clippers last year was Chris Dunn and then also Derek Jones starting alongside of Zubac in the front court. Obviously, in this scenario, I've switched that out. I've gone with John Collins because I just don't think spacing-wise all year long you can really justify having Dunn and Jones out there at the same time. So I think it's kind of more of a mix and match situation. But if you want to tell me that opening night, their starting lineup is Harden, Beal, Kawhi, Collins, and Zubac, that's fine. If you want to tell me it's Dunn and Jones, that's fine. If you want to tell me Bogdanovich or Batum is out there, all of that's fine. The point is the Clippers have a lot of depth, and they're clearly a really, really good team. It just, when you're talking about regular season projection, I can't really put them all that high in the Western Conference because you know Kawhi is going to miss like 40 games. You know Beal's going to miss like 35 games. And Harden is going to be out there doing his thing, but just him trying to carry this team in a tough Western Conference every night, it's unrealistic to me to expect them to be really, really good in that scenario. I've got them finishing at 7th in the conference with full understanding that just like this past year, whenever they get to the postseason, they're going to be really good. Like if they're healthy and they're ready to go, just like they were towards the end of the year last year, they're going to be a very tough out in the postseason, assuming all their guys are healthy and that like Kawhi is rostered and under contract by the LA Clippers by the time the postseason rolls around. That's where I'm at right now with the Clippers. Now let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. As of this recording, we're going to have to make some assumptions here about who is or is not on the roster because as of this recording, the Warriors have like 9 guys under contract as we're like 2 weeks away from training camp. So that obviously makes things difficult, but there's some rumors and some assumptions we can make about the roster. Obviously starting 5-wise, we're going Curry, Butler. I'm going to go Pajemski, then Draymond, and then Big Al, who we're assuming they are signing. Haven't actually, but we're assuming that's happening. Then off the bench, that gives you DeAnthony Melton, another assumed signing. Kuminga, who I'm assuming is going to be back with the team. Quentin Post, who's pretty good last year, and then Buddy Hield and Moses Moody. Obviously, you can swap out a couple of things here. You can get rid of Pods in the starting lineup. You can put someone else at the 5 and bring Big Al off the bench if that's something you really want to do because of, some concerns about his age. Obviously, you can play Draymond at the 5. The bottom line is, this team was really good last year when Curry and Butler and Draymond all played together. I'm just unsure how often that is going to be happening this season, and I think they're going to try and kind of coast a little bit through the regular season and just try and get healthy for the postseason. So if you're talking about regular season projection, I've got them at 8th in the conference with full understanding that once we get to the playoffs, they could beat not every team, but most of them. So depending on matchups, I could see them in the conference finals this year. I really, really could. I just need to see health. And frankly, I need to see what the roster looks like because as of right now, we still don't know who's going to be on the team opening night. Next up is the Sacramento Kings, another team that I had a lot of difficulty figuring out what the starting lineup is going to be. There's a couple of givens, right? Like DeRozan, Murray, Sabonis, and I think Levine. All those guys are pretty much locked in unless you want to try and talk DeMar DeRozan into coming off the bench. That's been unsuccessful in the past, so I'm assuming he's going to be starting again this year. And then you got to figure out the guard spot. I personally put Dennis Schroeder in there coming off of a crazy run at Eurobasket. He's always really good internationally. Some other candidates there, of course, are Malik Monk, who I think works a little bit better as like an off-the-bench scorer type than someone like Schroeder. Keon Ellis, who I think is really good and definitely could be kind of this like defensive type starter for this team in place of someone like Schroeder. And then even someone like Devin Carter. They do actually have some okay pieces. It's just crazy to think about what this roster was like 2-3 years ago, especially in the backcourt and what it is now. I don't like the Kings very much this year. I think this is a like complete rebuild team mid-season. I think they're a candidate for that. I think they're a candidate for trading Sabonis mid-year, for trying to trade DeRozan mid-year. I also think they're a candidate for the complete opposite direction. They have all of their first-round picks. I could see them trying to package Keegan Murray and all of their picks for somebody. Like Larry Markkinen could be on this team in the middle of the year. I have no idea what to expect in Sacramento. This is not the most technical analysis. I think the vibes are bad. Like, I don't think that the Kings have a lot of positive momentum. I think the roster has gotten worse like 3 consecutive years. I've got them finishing 13th in the Western Conference, which sounds strong, but when you look at some of the other teams ahead of them in the standings, I don't think it's all that strong. I have them finishing 13th. Next up, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. Do you need help figuring out what the starting 5 is for the Suns? Because I definitely did. I went and took a look at it. This is what I've come up with. Jalen Green, Devin Booker in the backcourt. That's 100% happening. I went with Grayson Allen and Dylan Brooks and Mark Williams. That's my group. I don't feel super confident about it, especially when it comes to the Allen and Brooks spots. Allen was really good for them and provides them spacing that they weirdly need, given that you kind of view, Booker and Green as like high skill guys, but in terms of just like off ball shooting, they do need some of that in the starting lineup. And then off the bench, that gives you Royce O'Neal, gives you Ryan Dunn, Nick Richards, and then Malawach, of course, the rookie. I don't really know what to do at the 4 spot. I mean, I guess you could take Allen out and you could put O'Neal out there, and that gives you, but they have a lot of like perimeter guys, but not a lot of combo forward guys. They got 3 different centers, all of which could play varying roles throughout the season. I don't love the roster. I think they did okay in the KD trade given the situation. I just don't love Jalen Green. I'm not a big Jalen Green guy, and I have them finishing 12th in the conference, which probably feels pretty low, but just like some of these other teams, if you really look at the West, it's hard for me to figure out how they're going to be better than anyone in front of them, with a couple of exceptions you could maybe talk me into. I'm not big on the Suns this year. I have them finishing 12th in the Western Conference. Next up is one of the big move teams from the offseason, and it is the Orlando Magic. Starting 5-wise, I went with Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. That's all pretty self-explanatory. That is a group that I think most people expect them to start the year with. Off the bench, that gives them Jace Richardson, the rookie. Tristan Da Silva was pretty good for them at times last year. Jonathan Isaac, Goga Bitadze, Anthony Black, Jet Howard, Tyus Jones, a bunch of really good options in Orlando. And I'm going to go and tell you right now, I'm really, really high on the Magic this year. I think they're going to be really good. Even though they gave up a bunch of stuff for Desmond Bane, he is absolutely perfect for their team in terms of someone that can take some on-ball reps, in terms of someone that can have a screen set for him by Paolo Banchero and put the defense in all kinds of conflict. He can space off the ball for a team that has been terrible on offense for over a decade. All of those things coming together, I think they're going to be the 3rd best team in the conference this year in the regular season. I think they're going to finish behind only the Knicks and the Cavs if everybody stays healthy. Bane on occasion has had some health issues. Jalen Suggs last year was like falling all over the place and hurt his back. Franz and Paolo both had a really bizarre injury that cost each of them multiple months, and it was the exact same injury. Beyond that, if they're healthy, my only real question mark is what's happening here at the 5 spot, because I like Wendell Carter Jr., but he's a little bit undersized. Bitadze is someone that I wouldn't really want to start. I don't really want Jonathan Isaac to be my full-time 5. I could see that as an upgrade spot throughout the season for a variety of different guys around the league. Like if Nick Claxton becomes available in Brooklyn, I could see the Magic trying to make something happen there, because I don't think the Nets are going to expect a ton in return. Beyond that, they've got some interesting lineup possibilities. I think Anthony Black's really good. He just doesn't super fit with a roster that's already struggling 3-point shooting wise. Tyus Jones could really help them in the backcourt as more of a true point guard kind of guy. Overall, I think the Magic are really going to be able to guard. I love Paolo. I love Franz. I really like Jalen Suggs. I think Bane is a perfect fit. And if they can be healthy and get a little bit better on offense, they compete at such a high level. They're so good defensively. I think they have a real chance to be like a conference finals team this year. I'm really, really high on the Magic. I cannot wait to see what they look like on opening night. Next, let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. Starting 5-wise, I've got Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka Okongwu. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Off the bench, you've got Luke Kennard, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the rookie Asa Newell, and of course, Kristaps Porzingis, which I think is really the only piece here that people would question why he isn't starting. It's either him or Nickeil Alexander-Walker in terms of, why is he not in the starting lineup? I just think they're going to prioritize the development of Ricochet. Dyson Daniels is not coming off the floor alongside Trae Young. I think Okongwu's really good, and I would just rather save KP for any potential postseason matchup. I think there's the possibility of those two guys playing together, although Jalen Johnson's really good. I don't really want to take him off the floor either. And I think it's just a situation where realistically, when you think about Alexander Walker, KP, and then the 5 starters I listed, they just have 7 starters. Like that's just shows the depth of this team. And I don't mind KP playing 20 minutes a night until we get to the end of the year. And then all of a sudden he's like the secret that you break out in the postseason. I don't mind the possibility of like, Ricochet, you're not really ready for like a big moment in the postseason. Okay, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, you're going to play 30 minutes a night now. I like all the depth and all the optionality that gives Atlanta. And spoiler alert, I really like Atlanta this year. I think they're going to be really good. I've got them as 4th in the Eastern Conference, and I could see them in the conference finals. I think they've done an unbelievable job with this roster, and it's really like a referendum season for Trae Young and for this team. He's up for a contract extension. They haven't given him one. This is the best roster they've ever put around him, and if they're like the 6th or 7th best team in a weak Eastern Conference this year, that is going to tell, I think, Atlanta and me a lot of what I need to know about where this team can truly go with Trae at the top of it. Having said that, I think they're going to be really good, assuming guys like Jalen Johnson, who dealt with some health stuff last year, is healthy. I really like the Hawks this year. Next, let's talk about the Miami Heat. Definitely a weird roster for them this year. Starting lineup wise, I've got Tyler Hero, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Jovic, and Bam Adebayo, which of course means that the big offseason addition, if you can call him that, Norm Powell is going to come off the bench. The exciting rookie from last year, Khalil Ware, is going to come off the bench. And then the forgotten members of the Miami Heat, Jaime Jaquez and Terry Rozier, are also going to come off the bench. I think the one maybe surprising piece here is that I went with Davion Mitchell as a starter. I just think they really like him. He can really guard. I really like him as well. I think he fits well with their group. Obviously, if they need a little bit more offense, they can go with Norm Powell. And I think the other piece of potential surprise here when it comes to their starting lineup is that I'm not putting the double big lineup out there with Khalil Ware alongside of Bam. And that's just because I'm not fully convinced that it was as good as everybody tried to make it seem like towards the end of last year. And I'm okay with just like Bam comes out, it's time for Khalil Ware, and playing them together at times during the game. But Jovic has been pretty good internationally, had a pretty good end of the season. I think his spacing is going to be pretty important in this group. And the bottom line for Miami is they're going to have a lot of options. Like, they don't have to be stuck on just this group. If Mitchell can't space, if they feel like they need more size with Ware and Bam together, actually pretty excited to watch this team play this year, maybe try some new things out offensively. And I'm probably higher than most people on the Heat going into the season. I have them at 7th. I think most people see this as like a maybe outside of the top 10 in the conference kind of team, because overall talent wise, there isn't this like primary star, but I believe in the coaching staff with the full off season to get it together with a new roster. I think Wiggins is a little bit better than people would expect. Overall, I have them at 7th in the conference. Next up is the Charlotte Hornets. Starting 5-wise, I'm going to go with LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, Miles Bridges, and Diabate, which good luck trying to figure out who the starting 5 is going to be. Like, not the starting 5, the literal like starting center this year for the Charlotte Hornets. I like Diabate. I think he's good. I think he's someone I'd rather play like 20 minutes a night, but the other options aren't that great. Like, you've got Plumlee, I guess, but that's the group I'm going to go with. Off the bench, you've got Colin Sexton, Tijan Salon, and Josh Green. I'm more interested in watching the Hornets play this year than I probably have been in a few years, but I don't think it's going to come to anyone's surprise that I don't think they're going to be that good. I've got them at 13th in the East. That could be much worse if LaMelo gets hurt like he seems to every year. We're going to see what Brandon Miller looks like coming off of another injury. Knipple's a nice like connecting piece, but I don't think he's someone that's really going to like super elevate them to, you know, a 40-win team or anything, especially with the issues that they have at the 5 spot. I just can't imagine this team is going to be very good. They look like a team that's going to pick in the top 5 again, hopefully get a really good big, and then maybe take their leap next year. Bit of an evaluation season for someone like LaMelo Ball with, you know, all the injuries and how much he's getting paid. But I have them at 13th in conference. Not the worst, but not the best either. Next up is the Washington Wizards, which I actually had more trouble figuring out their starting 5 than I thought I would, because in case you forgot, Chris Middleton and TJ McCollum are on the Washington Wizards this season, and obviously they don't want to be good, so it's hard to figure out exactly like how bad they want to be, how much they want to play those veteran guys. So to start the year, I'm going to project their starting lineup is going to be Bub Carrington, Chris Middleton, Bilal Coulibaly, who does have an injury right now, but I'm just assuming he's going to be okay like towards the start of the year, even if it's not literally opening night. Keyshawn George, who I think could be in line for a huge breakout season. He looked unbelievable at Summer League. And then Alex Sarr. Off the bench, that gives you Corey Kispert, AJ Johnson, Cam Whitmore, and CJ McCollum. If you want to tell me that CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton are going to be the starting backcourt on opening night for Washington, I wouldn't say that you're crazy. It just seems like it's just really difficult to project what this team is going to be, because neither of those guys are probably going to be on the roster by the middle of the season. And at that point, obviously, you're bumping a bunch of the young guys up to the starting group, including someone like Cam Whitmore that I think people kind of forgot did get traded to Washington this offseason. I don't think it's all that much of a surprise that I have Washington pretty far down the standings. I have them at 14th, but I do think this is going to be a pretty good team maybe next year. They're going to have some cap space. They're going to have some assets. They're going to get rid of CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton. I like Coulibaly a lot. I like Keyshawn George a lot. I think Sarr was better than most people kind of realized last year as a rookie. I think there's a lot to like here. If they get like a central piece to kind of bring it all together, a true star, whether that be someone on the roster that develops or someone they get next offseason, I think the future's pretty bright in Washington. For this season, though, they're 14th. They're the second worst team in the conference. Now let's talk about one of the teams I'm most excited to watch this season, and it's the Houston Rockets. Right now, starting 5-wise, it's difficult to figure out, but I'm going to go Van Vliet, Thompson, Durant, Jabari Smith, and Şengün. That is a gigantic lineup, especially with Thompson in there at the 2 spot, but I just couldn't come up with a Rockets lineup that didn't include Amen Thompson. Van Vliet has to start, Durant has to start, Şengün has to start, and with all of those things in mind, I felt like we needed a little bit more of like an off-ball, like a glue guy, spacing kind of player, and that's where Jabari Smith comes in. because I feel like the other 4 guys just have to start. Like, I don't think you can start games without Amen Thompson out there this year because he's just that good, which off the bench means you have a bunch of guys. Dorian Finney-Smith, Reed Shepherd, who I think some people are expecting to start this year because he's more of a traditional like backcourt guard guy, maybe someone that's going to start alongside Van Fleet. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I would rather have Amen Thompson out there. Tari Eason, Clint Capella, Steven Adams, Aaron Holiday, a bunch of options here in Houston, all of which are reasons why I have them as the second best regular season team in the conference this year. Just behind Oklahoma City, I think they're a real threat. It's going to be super interesting to watch how they try and integrate Kevin Durant into this really young team. And if they can figure out some potential spacing issues, I think they're going to be unbelievable. Like Durant at the end of these games with all these defensive players around him is just going to be such a fun team. The continued development of guys like Alperen Şengün. Houston's going to be really good. I can't wait to watch them play. And I really want to see what group they start the year with. Because if I'm right, if this is the starting lineup day one, I will be even more excited to watch Houston than I am already. Next up, let's talk about one of the more forgotten teams in the NBA this year, and it is the Memphis Grizzlies. Of course, they traded away Desmond Bane in the offseason. They're going to be relying on some younger guys and could be seen as a little bit of a transition kind of year for Memphis. Starting lineup-wise, I've got Ja Morant, Jalen Wells, who was really good for them as a rookie last year. KCP, just kind of out of necessity because they don't really have a lot of wings that you feel really good about. Jaren Jackson Jr. and then Zach Edey in the front court, although he's had an offseason injury thing, but this is just kind of like once we really get into the year, what's their starting lineup going to be? What do they hope it's going to be? I think Edey would be in there at the 5, which off the bench gives you Santi Aldama, Ty Jerome, who was the big offseason addition, Gigi Jackson, and Brandon Clark. Obviously, if Edey misses any amount of time, they have a bunch of options to kind of figure that out. They can start Jaren Jackson alongside Aldama. They can start Brandon Clark. Plenty of options there in Memphis. I'm a little underwhelmed, especially on the wing, in terms of overall talent in Memphis, which really has been the case for a while, but now without Desmond Bane, it's especially glaring. And given the strength of the conference, I think they're a play-in team. I think they're the 9th seed in the conference this year, unless we get some big jump from Jalen Wells, unless we get a return of Ja Morant to who he was like 2 or 3 years ago, unless Gigi Jackson makes a big step forward, unless Ty Jerome is just like unbelievable and has to start and just like basically replaces Desmond Bane. I don't see a huge year overall for Memphis, and I think it's more so going to be what do they look like next year as they kind of have a full offseason to potentially use some of these Desmond Bane assets. I've got them at 9th in the conference right now. Next up is maybe the deepest team in the entire league, and it is the Dallas Mavericks. Starting lineup-wise, obviously, when Kyrie is healthy, Kyrie will be starting, but to start the year, D'Lo is going to be in that spot. Klay Thompson, Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, and Derek Lively. I went with that group, and obviously the odd man out here is PJ Washington, who becomes one of the best bench players in the entire league, one of the best 6 men in the entire league, potentially front runner to be 6th man of the year. If that's how the lineup works out, I could see them having Cooper Flagg come off the bench, but given some of the comments by the coaching staff, given that they want him to get a lot of on-ball reps, I think the starting lineup is a really great place for him to do that. And overall, I was really impressed by just the depth of this roster. I just kind of forgot. I mean, they've got Jaden Hardy, they've got Dante Exum, PJ Washington, who I mentioned, Daniel Gafford, who's been a really nice 1-2 punch alongside Lively in the front court, Najee Marshall, who was really good for them last year, Max Christie, who was pretty solid, Brandon Williams, who I know a lot of people really like. There is a bunch of depth and talent here in Dallas. And then obviously once Kyrie comes back, this should be a pretty good team. Having said that, I think I'm a little lower on Dallas than most other people because I'm not fully confident that Kyrie is going to play at all this year. This is someone that generally has prioritized himself, understandably so, in not returning from injury too quickly. If we don't see Kyrie at all this year, I would not be surprised. And in that scenario, they're just not going to have enough offense unless Cooper Flagg has the greatest rookie season of all time. I've got them at 10th in the conference, also accounting for some, potential injury issues with someone like Anthony Davis. Overall, just kind of an older roster. And those are just a lot of the concerns I have with Dallas. I wish Kyrie was fully healthy because I think in that scenario, this is a pretty cool roster and you get to see what Cooper Flagg looks like with this group. But I just don't think you can really count on him to be what pretty much no rookie has ever been, which is this huge driving force in winning, which ultimately leads me to them being a play-in team still, but at 10th in the conference. Next up now is a team that I'm just going to go and tell you right now, I'm going to be higher on than most people out there is the San Antonio Spurs. I'm just going to go and ruin the surprise. I have them at 5th in the conference, which doesn't sound that high, but when you consider the other teams ahead of them, And behind them, that actually is pretty optimistic for a team that we haven't really seen at that high of a level yet. Starting five-wise, I went with De'Aaron Fox, Steph Castle, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, and Victor Wembanyama. And then off the bench, that gives you Dylan Harper, Luke Cornett, Carter Bryant, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson. Obviously, the big story going into the year, or the two big stories going into the year, are one, Wemby's health. He seems to be fully cleared of the medical issue. Hopefully that's the case so we can see how unbelievable this guy is going to be this year. And then, of course, the rookie, Dylan Harper, who's going to be coming off the bench in this scenario. How good is he right away? Does he force himself into the starting lineup? Do they go into a scenario where we're running 4 perimeter guys around Wemby and it's Fox and Harper and Castle and Vassell around Wemby because Harper just has to be out there and start? Or is take a little bit more of a back step and it's, Fox and Castle in the backcourt? Overall, I think my prediction of them being 5th in the conference just has everything to do with, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but if Victor Wembanyama is healthy, he could be the best non-Nikola Jokic player in the entire league this year. I think that is a realistic ceiling for how much of an overall impact he can have. I think he could be a top 2, top 3 MVP finish guy this season. And if that happens and he's healthy, they're going to be one of the best teams in the West. They just are, just because he's that good. Fox and him build some kind of connection. The big question here, and I'm sure there are Spurs fans yelling at the video right now, is coaching. The guy that replaced Greg Popovich as coach, I would say Spurs fans are not thrilled with him so far. And I mean, he's a young coach. He's a first-time coach. He's going to get it figured out, I hope. But that could be the thing that holds back the team. And then we go to next year and okay, this is the real takeoff year for the Spurs. They added someone else in the offseason. They've got a new coach, and now they're going to take off. I'm going to get a little bit ahead of that curve, and I'm going to say that is going to be the Spurs this year, and that I'm not overly worried about the coaching situation, but I'm sure there are Spurs fans out there that are concerned. But like I said, I got them finishing at 5th in the conference. Next up now, let's talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. Good luck trying to figure out what the starting lineup is going to be. This has been a thing for the Pelicans for years because they have 3 wings that, in my opinion, absolutely have to start if they are healthy. Those 3 guys are Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion. Those 3 guys just have to start. They're that good. Then you got to figure out the rest of the roster. I ended up going with Vez Missy, who was really, really good for them last year at the starting 5 spot. The backcourt, by the way, Jordan Poole's on the Pelicans. DeJounte Murray also on the Pelicans. And I ended up going with Murray in the starting lineup, which gives you the 2 rookies, Fears and Queen, off the bench. And then Poole, who I mentioned, Jordan Hawkins and Jose Alvarado. In theory, on paper, that's a pretty good team. But you know what happens every year in New Orleans? A couple of these guys get hurt. They, for whatever reason, have the worst, injury issues every single season. So I've got them finishing at 14th in the conference, which would be a complete disaster for a team that just traded away a future first-round pick to move up in the draft and get Derek Queen. Maybe they're remarkably healthy for the first time, ever. Maybe the rookies are really good. Maybe Jordan Poole gives them the offense that they need, and DeJounte Murray's really good defensively. I'm not going to believe it until I see it. I've got the Pelicans at 14th in the conference. And there you have it. That is the entire preview for every single team in the NBA this season.